Hey buddies, welcome to AmassGames. My name is Simon. I'm doing a podcast here, but it turns out it's going to be more of a video. So this is basically going to be another video episode of me talking to someone over in Toronto, I believe, and someone I've been conversing with a few times over on boardgamegeek, and I think via Gmail now and again. So over to you, Chris. Please introduce yourself.
Hi there, I'm Chris Cormier. I am a board gamer, obviously. I have a board game t-shirt, merchandise, gifts and goodies website and store where I design t-shirts and a whole host of other projects from mugs to posters to clocks and shower curtains and mouse pads and all kinds of stuff. Um, and that's on my website at geekygoodies.com. Geeky Goodies is the company. I'm quite active on social media. I facilitate is probably the good word. Conversations with board gamers online every Monday with a hashtag called hashtag what did you play Mondays, where I encourage people to talk about what games they've been playing and post about them on social media so that we can create more awareness of board gaming and how fun it is and get people interested. And yes, you were right. I'm in Toronto. Well, I'm not, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. I'm not in Toronto. I've been in Toronto most of my life, and we moved to a small town about an hour north of Toronto. So I still tell people that I live in Toronto because most people have not heard of the small town that I'm from, which is Bob Cajun, Ontario. Like I said, it's about an hour north of Toronto. And love it. Very small town. And miss Toronto, miss all the excitement and the action, and our friends and family still live there. And we're back quite often, but liking the small town life as well.
Cool. Well, I need to think about a shower curtain, although I've been loving using a shower screen the last few years, so whether or not I need to get a print on that. And I do know someone 7 hours north of you in Cochrane, I believe,
Okay.
where I met this firefighter on holiday in Antigua. And yeah, he drank a lot in the mornings and the evenings, and I asked him about that, and he went, "Oh well, I hydrate first thing and last thing." So anyway, he can do and that works. Speaking of t-shirts, I'm not wearing my New Kingdom Gaming AmassGames stuff. That's in the wash because I'm back from Spiel.Essen. Spoke about Chris a little before this show because we're initially going to do it as a podcast. We've ended up switching back to a tried and tested format, I guess we can say, which is on screen. This time I'm not standing up after a week of running around Essen. And yes, everyone did say, sorry, I would have spoken to you, Simon, but you were just running everywhere. And that's what people often say at many of these shows because I'm running all over the place, trying to catch stuff. If you heard my recent podcast, you know that there's about 89 places I visited and I still missed off about 30 odd. And I'm like, oh, blast, I was going to pick up that game, etc. So,
Wow.
yeah, I know that Chris is talking about Halloween stuff on his podcast every month or so. There's about 24 episodes and also the Christmas stuff. And I said you get bored with or running out of ideas, and he hasn't, which is quite cool. I know Chris hasn't reached like Gen Con or Origins and stuff like that. There's a place in Toronto which has about 1,000 people attending. My event is in a week's time at Hexacon at time of recording, so that's going to be quite cool. There's a guy from Shut Up Sit Down who might be attending. Somebody thinks he might have family nearby. So yeah, about a sixth of the collection behind me presently. That is before more games arrive tomorrow because AmassGames have got a whole bunch of stuff due, which is a whole carload in a big car as well from someone who's bringing some extra stuff for me from Spiel.Essen. And I'm one of the only people who call it Spiel.Essen because since they got bought out, everyone calls it Essen. I did too. Everyone calls it Spiel sometimes. But since they got bought out, there's obviously many Spiels now. So you obviously say the name of the event and then obviously the subsidiary, i.e., the location. But Chris, again, we haven't spoken before an hour ago, so
Yeah.
do you have a favourite game or anything like that? Anything we can go, oh, that's interesting.
Wow. You asked me tomorrow, I'll probably give you a different
That's
answer.
fine. Say true.
But one of my favorite games, definitely, it's been on in the top couple for a while. It's still Viticulture. By Stonemaier Games. I still love that game. It's I'm sure you're familiar with it, but it's a winemaking game where you follow the different seasons, and over a course of several years, you're bringing in guests and having wine tasting, and you're fulfilling wine orders, and you're planting vines and harvesting the grapes and putting them on crush pads and converting them into different kinds of wines. It's a fantastic game. Absolutely love playing it. Haven't played it nearly enough, in my opinion, but that's why it's one of my favorites. I guess if I had to pick another one, the one that's sort of been on my favorites list for a very long time is actually Alumbra.
Oh,
We have
okay.
the big box of Alumbra,
Yeah.
and it's got I don't know even know how many 20 or 30 or something like that expansions in it, and we never get bored of that one. We play it a lot, and I play it on my phone sometimes,
Ah.
although it doesn't have nearly as many expansions on my phone. And there's still expansions in the box that we haven't played. So,
Yeah, so Alhambra,
what
I've
do you
been
think?
there. I've been to about 227 places named, well, board games that are named after those places.
Oh,
Obviously,
cool.
Viticulture, obviously Tuscany. It's in the northwestern part of Italy. I've only been to Italy about 5 times, but obviously, I'm guessing we're talking about the Essential Edition of Stonemaier Games, as Jamie Stegmaier's uh, viticulture. I will only play that though with visitors from the Wine Valley sort of mini expansion or expansion. We change out the cards because you said about making wine. I've won the game numerous times, never making any wine whatsoever, and it's that kind of a game, and you're just pushing your luck, almost trying to get those Sauvignon Blanc grapes, etc. And it's a bit, yeah, that's the issue I felt. And as a five, we're talking including setup and teach and pack down with new players. It's about literally, I've pretty accurate. It's 3 hours 25, 3 hours 30, which it's for me yeah, you're into some fairly vintage wines at that point that have aged quite well. So
Yeah.
yeah, but Queen Games obviously from Alhambra as well. I don't know if that won the Spiel des Jahres. From memory, I can't recall if it actually did, but it's definitely
Not
out
sure.
there as a kind of classic Euro from about
Yeah.
20 odd years ago. Is there anything you've played recently though?
What have I played recently that I loved? I played The Living Forest
Oh yeah,
not too long ago and bought it because I loved it so much.
yep,
Um, it's sort of a deck building with sort of a tableau build, in there as
yep.
well. It's very, very good. Have you played it?
I have, yes. I've only played it on
Yeah.
Board Game Arena, but
Okay.
having heard about it recently, I might definitely want to try out that and the expansion. I've heard it kind of improve it quite significantly, and I know it won the Spiel des Jahres, I think Kennerspiel of all
I
things,
think it did. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
threw me quite quite surprisingly. I've been fairly accurate in guessing. Well, at least 7 years in a row, I guessed this game. I
Wow.
reckon will be nominated, and then actually ended up winning. Starting with I think King Domino up to Quacks and games since then. But one thing that threw me, funny enough, was a Stonemaier game, which was Wingspan, when I did not think
Mm.
that would win, and it did win. And there's a few others since then as well. I didn't anticipate them winning too. But Micro Macro, that's another one I really thought, this is amazing. I think straight away, bam, and of course it got nominated.
Yeah.
Any games you're looking to try playing?
Hmm. There's a long list. I don't. Nothing really kind of stands out as like, oh, geez, I gotta play that right at this moment. But I have one of those brains that if I don't write it down, it's kind of lost.
Yeah,
So I'd have to consult my, want to play list on BGG and check that out. I'm down to play anything. So, if I haven't played it before, I'll play it, whether it's, you know, 20 years old or 2 weeks old.
cool.
Um, but yeah, I don't have really that's pretty impressive though. You spotting the Spiel des Jahres winners and beforehand. That's very good. I'm
I
not
just
sure.
felt. I mean, it's a German panel. I'm not German myself, but I know that the four things that they need for criterias are easy to teach, easy to learn, family accessible, and I think generally
Right.
speaking these days 20 to 60 minutes. So this is before I knew all of that. I just felt like, wow, this is an amazing game. I think it should be nominated. Like say Codenames, King Domino, Azul, Quacks Quedlinburg. Now these just happen to be maybe whatever people think too. I just felt like this would be nominated. But again, that was a few years ago now. In the last 3 years, I've been a bit off with my predictions.
Yeah.
And there's a few games I really thought they should be nominated but weren't. I can't recall the one at the top of my head. But oh, I know the Quest for Eldorado. I thought that should have been nominated, or
Oh
at least be
yes.
shortlisted. But it's now rated as his best game, and yet the German public, and I met Rainer Knizia on Saturday. Got a coin
Did
from
you?
him. Yeah, got a coin stamped with him because it was one of my quests this year. Didn't see him last year, so one of my quests, having met Stefan Feld last year, is to meet him. So that's really good to do. And generally speaking, like with the game coming back to wine, with a Spiel des Jahres nomination or award, like I remember The Legends of Andor in 2012 when
Yeah.
it came out in German. I thought, let's play this. We played it in German because I just felt like that's a good pedigree of something that's good. I know you do get an extra 1.3 million copies sold potentially from obviously such an award badge. Initially, I
Yeah.
didn't realize it was like a pawn from Pandemic that make up the laurel leaves, even though it came out in 1979, the award. But no, yeah, I'm very much, it's for me, it's typically if you play one of those games, you know what you're going to get into and you know what you're going to like. And you might like heavier games like Viticulture. I do like my heavier games. I'm generally speaking are games which I'll give on average rating a 7.5 or an 8, which is a lot higher than my average, which is 6.34. But just to let you know, everybody, Chris and I did not speak too much in advance. We did chat just to get some audio working. But again, these questions you might say, "Whoa, Chris isn't ready for these questions," and that's because I
That's
just
true.
want it to be really open. I just wanted to be, I actually said earlier, I said the first few minutes we were chatting, obviously we weren't recording, and it's amazing how much, sometimes that can be the best bit, and Chris agrees, and it's like, oh, why aren't we
Yeah.
recording this? Um,
Yeah.
so yeah. So as for who knows what's going to be the biggest stuff for next year? Because any games that have just been released, those are key. I think Far Away. Have you heard of Far Away?
I have. Yeah, I've not played it. I can't quite picture the box at the moment, but I definitely heard of it. That's what your prediction is for this one?
Not not prediction, but it was my game of the show, and it was well, it was the game of that weekend. Even though technically I didn't play at Essen, it did sell out. I was very
Mm.
lucky that I was at an event over in Bochum, which is a 30-minute drive from Essen, where I was invited to, and other people playing Evenfall, and I could have played it. It was their first game, and this guy who's a designer called Andy Couch, who designed Seize the Bean, he said, "Oh, well, I've got this game in here, and it has an awful kind of cover art in a way. It's very odd." But so I'll give it a go and ended up playing it 7 times in a row, and I managed to get a demo copy. So I got a rare demo
No.
copy because the new editions are around in red only, and I can never predict who watches what on my channel. Me opening a pack of card sleeves got like 8,000 views, and I didn't even sleeve anything. But
Wow.
I know, and then one person commented at one point, "You had one job to do." Anyway, Far Away it's had like 800 views in the first 2 days, and I deliberately held back on even releasing the video. So yeah, that's doing really well, and it's basically like for
Wow.
sale. So for those who aren't aware, you're playing out 8 cards. You've got three in your hand. You play a high or a low card. It's up to you. If you play a higher card, then you're later to pick one of the three available cards that you can then use in your hand for your next turn. The reason for playing a lower card is if your next card is higher than that, then you get a bonus card. And the bonus card might mean you get an extra symbol. Symbols are useful to completing set collection for missions. Maybe they give different colours, and different colours can help you complete stuff. Again, check out my video. I'm only one who's done something in English at this point. But also,
Hmm.
what's interesting is you can collect scrolls, and the more scrolls you have in your tableau, so again, it's only 8 cards. Basically, thematically, is someone's walking left to right, and they're going across stuff, and they're seeing like an animal or a plant or a stone. But if you see a plant, or if you see a quest, and he goes, "Hey, I need 10 points. To get 10 points, I need to see two animals and a plant." Your next cards along to the right have to have a total of two animals and a plant, for example. It doesn't matter where they are, or in your special bonus cards. So you're walking along and, well, I need to get that, I need to get that, and I need to now play a lower card to get what I need. The downside is, if I play a higher card, you can get one of these bonus cards. I always like going for the bonus cards because they're freebies, but I never win with these bonus cards. So actually, it's really clever how it's like Seven Wonders.
Right.
Normally in a game, oh, straight up victory points. Oh no, 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 don't go for that strategy. But in Seven Wonders, going for those blue leader cards, brilliantly weighted. Have you ever noticed that in Seven Wonders that just going for those leader cards you can win? I've seen lots of people win that way.
I haven't really noticed it. I've played Seven Wonders quite a bit, but I don't know. It never really caught on with me. I think I was always just kind of playing it because other people liked it a lot more than I did. But I admire the game for what it is, and I know it's extremely popular. But for me, it just never caught fire. I kept playing it, kind of hoping I would love it more. I'm gonna play it one more time, see if I really like it as much as everyone else seems to like it at the table.
I
But I
agree.
never bought a copy
It
because I didn't
was
like it.
a bit. I didn't like it initially. I found it too complicated, and yet
Hmm.
I think it took almost an hour to play it the first time. And I felt bizarrely I won, but only because the person on the left and the right were helping me. I think we played as a seven, but
Hmm.
I've since met the designer Anton Bowser, and I've played it 7 times in a row. I've played another game 7 times in a row. I've played it in 8 minutes as well.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow. 8 minutes.
Azul I've played in 9 minutes 44. So that's my fastest
Wow.
Azul. So yeah, like sometimes a bit of speed. Ticket to Ride New York in 80 seconds. So I need to get
Oh
some
my
videos made for
goodness.
this. But sometimes we play things fast. But yeah, so that's really good. But the game of the year, which was also at the show, but I played it back in June at kind of the European Gathering of Friends, was called Mimic Octopus Cringe Edition, which is a game for I think 4 to 8 players. And what it's about is you're going to shuffle up some cards, draw a card each, and some of those cards potentially means that you could have the same card as someone else. And you're now going to start talking, and you're trying to find someone else who has a similar or the same basically personality as you. And if you do, you're eventually going to go 1, 2, 3 and point, and you're going to try and point at somebody else who's on the same team as you. However, you might be the only one, in which case, when you say 1, 2, 3, you're going to hold up a fist to say, nope, I knew I was alone, but you might want to try and mimic someone, and you get more points that way if someone points at you, and of course they don't get any points because they pointed at the wrong person. And the
Hmm.
final option is you can put your hands up and go, hey, and that basically means, from memory, I'm going to say safe, I'm just going to claim 1 point. I think it's the inverse between that and that. But extremely funny game, really clever. There's three
Oh,
editions. It's called Mimic Octopus, and there's three
mimic
editions.
octopus.
Mimic
Okay.
Octopus. So there's three editions. There's original, there's flirt, and there's cringe. Cringe is definitely the best. Myself and others agree with that. Yeah, highly recommend it. It's 8 out of 7. Okay, so 8.7 for me, which is definitely my top 50 now of 2,400 plays, different games. So yeah, very recommend that. Is there any game that got you into board gaming though?
There's some debate. My wife and I were introduced to board gaming. I think it's in the late '90s, early 2000s,
Cool.
and between the two of us, I thought it was the downfall of Pompeii,
Okay.
and she says it was Ticket to Ride. So it's one of those two, and also in there was the Battlestar Galactica board game. This other couple and I were big fan. We were all big fans of the show, and they told us, "Oh, there's this game you got to play with us." Da, 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 da. And when that's one of the first couple modern board games that you play, it's a big game. Like
Yeah, yeah.
you're talking about. I don't think it's possible to play like a 30-minute version of Battlestar
No.
Galactica. I don't think we've played it in less than 4 hours or four
Yeah,
and a half
6 or so
hours,
for
and
us.
that's with everybody knowing it too.
Mm.
um but it was great. I loved it. Obviously, I've been in the hobby ever since and been buying games and collecting and all of that. So, but
Cool.
yeah, my wife and I don't, I didn't keep track of what games I played back then, but my wife and I disagree on what was the first game.
Okay. Well, Ticket to Ride will be 2004. I can't recall when you said Downfall of Pompeii. I thought you were going to say Downfall by Wolfgang Kramer then. So that's a
Hmm.
different game. But
No, yeah.
yeah, so Ticket to Ride obviously coming up to 20th anniversary next year, in fact. So who knows? Of course, you've got Ticket to Ride Legacy, which is apparently extremely good. So yeah, that sounds
Mm.
very exciting.
Yeah,
But
I've heard that's very good.
yeah, there's a friend of mine who's got all the ticket to rides, and supposedly I'm like locked into being promised to be playing with him, which would be good. And I mean, Matt Leacock would be one or two people, along with Alan Almoon, who are hopefully to meet next year if they both happen to be at SPIEL.digital. I know that Matt was there, but he clashed when I was due to see some other things, and regrettably, I think on the Sunday I could have seen him, but there is a brewery, a game brewer, who have some beer there, and I was kindly offered a couple of beers, and these are Belgian beers, so they were not on the lower end of the scale of strength. And me going around other halls after that would not be advisable when I already had a lot of games to carry. And then seeing if he's in a queue and probably if he for a spell my breath at that point, I don't think that would be wise. But yeah, big fan of Ticket to Ride. Definitely agree with obviously that choice. I don't know if you knew. Actually, obviously I'm from England. He was from England. He was here until the age of 6, and then moved to Niagara Falls, and obviously did the Gathering of Friends. So yeah, he's
Hmm.
obviously
I
uh,
did not know that. No.
yeah. So
Yeah.
but yeah, obviously I played his prior games, Elfin Roads and Elfin Lands, which were also Spiel des Jahres nominated. I think one of them won it as well. I definitely used to own one
Okay.
of them. And of course, one of them is also on Board Game Arena now, alongside obviously Ticket to Ride, which again we know has sold 40 plus million copies and is also on there.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite version of Ticket to Ride?
Um, I think it's probably the one that I purchased most recently, which was several years ago, I guess, whenever it came out. But it's the is it Rails and Boats?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Rails and Boats? Yeah, yeah. I like that one a lot. We've kind of moved on. Like I love Ticket to Ride, and I have I don't know 3 or 4 copies of different versions of it, but we don't play them very much anymore. When we first got into gaming, we must have played Ticket to Ride over 100 times before I started keeping track of my plays and what games I play. But but yeah, I the ones that got tracked, when I started doing that, I think it's probably I'd only had about 50. So I think I missed like the first 100 plays of Ticket to Ride and Puerto Rico and those kinds of games, Catan and all
yeah.
those early starter games. Um, but yeah, no, I think that would be it. Um, so why don't you tell me? Do you mind on your podcast if you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
sure.
where are you? Where are you located?
I'm in a room.
No.
So I'm so I started. Yeah, it's handy to put it in perspective and appreciate that, especially because you may well be sharing this. So well, the podcast started way after the YouTube stuff and everything like that. So my wife's German, so when I go to Germany every other year, including this year, which I'm very excited about, they love playing games. I'm so excited that I'm playing 15 or 16 hours a day with them. It's brilliant. They also
That's awesome.
speak Plattdeutsch, which is Old German, which is even their
Oh,
neighbours of 27 years don't understand them. So to play board games with them is just a great harmony between that two as a balance. So I've got like
wow.
Meadow, the German edition over there, and Chronicles of Avalon in German and stuff. And Joanna said, "Oh, sorry, we didn't have the English version." So I spoke to her this year at Rebel, but now they haven't got any English left or whatever, which is a shame. So, yeah, I've been arranging stuff at pubs as well for a number of years, and I went from every other week to every day at different pubs. Then asmodee saw me do that and said, "Hey, do stuff at conventions." So I did for them. Lots of publishers saw what I did, and they said, "Oh yeah, do Instagram, do YouTube." And for 4 years, I was like, "Nope." And then I was sent about 60 games in one day, and I was like, "All right, I'll give it a go." And now, yeah, I've just been doing daily videos for the last 5 years. Instagram's
Wow.
over 3,200 posts. The podcast, again, having been nagged about other stuff, I thought, all right, let's try the podcast out. Another way of just people chatting. Obviously, there's
Yep.
a Facebook group, there's this convention, there's TikTok, X, and there's some other bits and bobs too. So, yeah, I love playing games, as you could probably imagine. People know I'm the board game guy and kind of won't shut up about it. But yeah, obviously some people say an encyclopedic knowledge, but yeah, I find it very fascinating and it's nice to chat with people about it. My pulse rate lowers. I met someone actually off Board Game Geek at their house beginning of the year, and obviously a new place. You'd think my heart rate would be racing playing one of their games which I've never played before, even heard of. And no, I not only did I actually win the game by accident, I think, but my pulse rate was 43. So obviously really chilled
Wow.
out, and I cycled over 2 hours in fact because I came from my parents' house to go there. So yeah, no, it's a good thing. I look at screens all day, or used to for my day job. So, given the chance, a bit of cardboard, occasionally a bit of chatter. It doesn't have to be much chatter. It depends on the game. But no, I enjoy it, and there's immersion going on there. It's nice to have a hobby that is fairly healthy. I deliberately try and I whale my board games in the videos when I unbox them because I like to cycle. So I know I live on a hill, so basically, and that was on purpose because of climate change. So
Okay.
I wanted to think about not the hill wasn't from climate change. That was from ge- geological
No.
forces. I'm going to
Hopefully
say.
not.
I think they sit on a load of radon, so I don't know how much cardboard does for that. And yeah, and from a podcast perspective, it's just interesting to have another medium because if I'm driving or something, I listen to 2 podcasts already today. It's interesting to hear about
Oh.
other stuff. Of course, as with YouTube and everything else, the downside is you catch stuff and go, I want to play that now, and
Mhm.
that is the issue. So I did open some new games today. Again, by the time this goes out, they may have already been gone out too. But Atlantis Rising Second Edition. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah,
I've never
not
played it,
played that one either.
but yeah, I know Z Garcia, who I played with actually last week at SPIEL.digital as well. We played Jin,
No.
by Benjamin Schwer. Have you heard of Hall Games or Crown of Amara?
No, I don't know that one.
I don't know if he did Bricks. He's made about 4 games, 4 or 5 games. I really like the design. Hadara he did as well,
Okay, I
which
know Hadara. Yeah.
have you played it? I know I've only played it online, but he likes it in
No,
person.
I've not. I've not, but I think I've seen it. Is it on Board Game Arena that I've
It
seen it? I
is.
think.
So I have played it
Yeah,
on there. It didn't click too well. I watched the game night video, which was good, but as
it didn't.
most games, I prefer to play in person. I just feel that
Yeah.
viticulture, funny enough, I think I don't mind snapping through that online, just because some things
Mm,
automate it nicely. Um, doesn't mean I'd then, if I owned the game, I'd sell it, but there's definitely some games I do. I mean, that's far away. You can play online now as well, but it misses a little something because, especially when you play a card, it's different with that game. But when you play a card in general, it's in the discard pile or whatever. But your mind knows it's there. You don't have to display the cards. But when it's
right.
digital, I think your mind doesn't make that association as strongly, and that's why with some games it's a shame. Equally with games like chess, someone suddenly goes, "Ooh," and a piece has moved. I think it's nice to kind of see the eyes of the opponent and seeing, they want to touch that piece and they want to do that, and there's a huge amount I think of that, because it really helps you think differently.
Yeah.
But I played Undaunted Stalingrad yesterday on Mission 13. Have you come across that deck building game?
I have not played it, but I've talked to a couple people who have, and I hear it's quite good.
Yeah, so it's definitely grown on me hugely. Although equally, my first game, I was really annoyed by the luck of the dice. Now I got very lucky with my dice yesterday, so I was having a, having a good game. And the key part of it is your dice will improve in terms of the chance of getting a hit as you move closer to your opponents. The downside is they can then take the risk, and depending on how much defense you've got, and based on the tile that you land on, if they then roll their dice, then they've got an earlier chance potentially of hitting you. Again, you're taking initiative to say who goes first. So you're playing an earlier card or a weaker card, which means you're going to go later typically, or a higher value card, which means if you play that for initiative, of course you're not playing it in your hand. I'll do another video for this because it's a quite hard game to articulate, but it isn't difficult. The crucial thing is though, do you want to go first or second? Now if I attack you and I win, you need to lose a card from your hand. And if that card is the troop that you're about to hit me with, then you've no longer got it. But there's like 10 different cards. You start with riflemen and scouts and gunners maybe. The fact
Mm,
is, if they're not in your deck and you only got 4 cards in your hand, one for your initiative, got 3 cards left, I don't know what you've got in your hand. So I might not be attacking you to get rid of the card, but I might be attacking you because the objective might be to lose all your riflemen or your scouts. Just to let you know, why do you need riflemen? You need to control locations. So most of the objectives or missions are around trying to control locations. Whereas in scouts, they help you to move. So you can't move to a different tile unless your scouts have moved there first, unless it's been scouted. Hard to articulate maybe until you see the board, but think Memoir
sure.
44. Think
Yep.
it's a modular board. You cannot move to a different space unless you've been there. So every character has a different ability, and that's it. It's a deck building game. So obviously you get more cards, you get more scouts, which means you're more likely to have a scout card come up, which means when you play them out, you can now see more of the board. Once you see more of the board, it now means your other guys can now go into those spaces. If you think about games like Command and Conquer, that kind of stuff. It's really
Right.
cool. And I met one of the designers, Trevor Benjamin. So Trevor Benjamin was behind Mandala as well. If that,
Okay.
so I met Brett J. Gilbert, who's the other half of that design team. Have you heard of Elysium or Roll for
Oh yeah.
Adventure, Costa Rica? So I've known this designer. He did Elysium by himself. Most of the time
Yeah.
he collaborates. But Elysium, he was nominated for Spiel des Jahres. So that's like his big, well-known game.
Yeah.
And I was gaming, so obviously gaming at pubs, and then through someone there, they asked for a lift. And then they said, "Oh, I'm going to this event at this business park. Could I get lift back and you can come along and have free pizza and stuff?" I went, "Sure." And through that, I met some people who attended this event. And through that event, this business park is it's a cyber kind of business park. One of them said, "Oh, we're doing another event in 2 weeks." Now, this person doesn't work at this venue. He just knows a friend who used to work there. So already
Hmm.
I'm quite far removed from the organizer, but I've got well with him luckily. And he said, "Oh yeah, we're doing another event the second Thursday of the month." And it turned out the guy who runs the fourth Thursday business park event, I'm trying to not name the company, he actually used to work with this woman who runs the second Tuesday one. So when I joined the second Tuesday one, again, I didn't know who this woman was. I just turned up and, oh, hello, you must be this person. And I went, oh, yes, hello, and got on really well. Plus, someone who works there knows someone who works at the Thursday one. So, what I'm trying to get
Okay.
at is one time there's a chap who turned up with a prototype for a game, and I was like, oh, yeah, do you want to try playing this game? And, yeah, sure. And said, my name's Brett, and I know the woman who runs it, and I know her last name's Gilbert. So I said, oh, you're Brett Gilbert, Brett J. Gilbert. You're the Brett J. Gilbert. And, oh, yes. So I went to shake his hand, and I've known him ever since. And through him, I've met some other great designers such as Dave Neal, who's done the Animals of Baker Street, which I've done a video for and actually got a physical copy of coming tomorrow. Other designers such as Matthew Dunstan, who's done loads of stuff in the adventure game series, and other fantastic designs. The Guild of Merchant Explorers by AG and a few others.
Hmm.
They're really good designers. I've got a playlist you can check on my YouTube channel, so I recommend you check that out. I think for both of them, but also I've met a few other designers, which is really cool. Just Rory Muldoon, I think he is. So these are the big the Brit wave, I guess you can say, of designers, because they all live around Cambridge. Obviously, Cambridge University is now the fifth best in the world, apparently. Oxford being number one, but Oxford is more for the scholars. Uh, I think more the STEM subjects for Cambridge.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just fantastic to meet these designers because, again, coming back to wine, I think if you know your wine comes from a certain region, you know what you're going to get. Equally with a designer, generally speaking, you might not be going to get like an Alexander Pfister game. Uh,
Right.
you might get some mismatches, as I find. So, speaking of designers, do you have any designers that you really like, or would like to play more of, or are on your radar, that kind of stuff?
Well, you mentioned that you met Knizia, and I think Knizia was really he was probably one of the first designers that I was like, oh, I love this game. I love the other game that he designed. I would love to meet Knizia. That's would be my number one reason for heading over to Essen because I would love to meet him at some point. Um, yeah, I have quite a few that I like. I like a lot of Feld's games. I like Knizia. I like I tend to like lighter games. Like
Same.
I'm not like a really heavy, 4 hour gamer. I prefer games that are sort of an hour to an hour and a half,
Hmm.
and that are relatively easy to learn and play kind of quickly. Um, but yeah, that's what stands out to me. You talked about different designers in Toronto. There's a huge community of game designers that is really really active and tight knit, and you'll see them at like different playtest events at the board game cafes or the different cons that are in the area. Eric Lang is probably the biggest one.
He was there last weekend. I saw him.
But yeah, I'm
I,
sure he
I
was.
didn't
Yeah,
say hello to him. I was playing a So My game, and I was like, I was going to call out to him, but I'm sure he was just wandering. He wasn't in a hurry. But oh, so I might message him saying I missed you. But quickly, briefly on that though, Stefan Feld, met him last year, same height as me. I'm very tall, very muscular back.
yeah. Okay.
But equally, yeah, my top four games are light games. So as much as I like heavy games and something, like I said, I highly rate my heavy games. And whilst that means obviously the other lighter games, I've had some bad lighter game experiences, or they're not
Mm.
so good. But Knizia, like Strozzi, I like to play again as a six. Talk about Quest for Eldorado. And I think, is it Erica Boyoris? Is she based in Toronto?
Yep.
And
Yeah, she's in the Toronto area. I think she's in Toronto. Christopher Chung, who did Lanterns.
oh, really? Cool, from Renegades and Pegasus Spieler.
Um, oh my God,
Lichterfest.
I'm drawing a
I'm
blank.
trying
Sen
to think.
Fu Ling
That's the one I was
and
trying to
Big.
name. Sen. Yes. So Sen is the
Yeah.
first name I was going to say, but I've never played it. I have played one of his games actually. But Erica, I messaged the other week because there's the Dodology podcast, which I was going to appear on, wanted to appear on, but yeah, I haven't heard anything back from them. But
Mhm.
yeah.
um, Daryl
Oh
Andrews
wow, from
from Sagrada.
Sagrada. Yep.
Again, like Sen and Daryl, I don't think are in Toronto. They're just outside of Toronto, but I mean, incredibly active in the GTA area. And
GTA.
I'm not a game designer, but
Oh,
I've
Grand
been
Toronto.
to.
Okay.
Sorry, what?
So GTA, Grand Toronto area.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
in the GTA, Greater Toronto area. And so, I'm not a game designer, but I've been to a lot of playtesting events at people's houses and at, Snakes and Lattes and different board game cafes. And these guys show up there and they play other people's games, and they give like really thoughtful, helpful advice to, some guy who took a an hour long board game design course and is designing his first game ever. And they, are they're not harsh, they're helpful, they're honest about their opinions of what will make the game better. But yeah, very, very impressive. It's a it's an interesting community to be part of because I don't think I've, I mean, the board game world is very supportive, and you meet all kinds of people in a wide range of socioeconomic backgrounds and cultural backgrounds and age differences and jobs and that kind of thing. But the board game design community, which I don't consider myself as part of, except as a playtester occasionally, um, is unlike anything. Like in terms of being supportive and helpful and just sort of free and open with the information. Like my wife and I know Sen Fung Lim quite a bit, and we've met him on a number of occasions. We've played a few of his games, and I just sort of pick in his brain, like, what's it like to be a designer? How does this work? How does the publishing pitch work, and
Yep.
that kind of thing. And he's talked to us for probably an hour about how his process for designing a game, how him and his design partner Jay um, pitch games and sell games, and how publishers approach them and different things. And I was just blown away by just quality information. Again, I
Yeah.
don't want to design a game. I'm not really interested in that, but if I wanted to, I know that there's a ton of people in the community locally here who would be willing to help and set up connections and do all kinds of things. Um, Helena Capel and Josh Capel,
That's
they
cool.
own Kids Table Board Game. That's a Toronto-based publishing. They have both published games like Food Fighters and is it Diced Veggies and Haunt the House, that kind of thing. Um, uh, a good friend is Stephen Sauer, who published or designed Perlock Holmes,
Oh,
the Moriarty's, no, Furiarty's Trail. He's gonna kill me because I got it wrong, but he's got a store in the Toronto area where he sells, like, oddities and Harry Potter things and all kinds of things, and it's this cool store. I don't think he's designing as much as he was, but yeah, it's an amazing community. We have Breakout Toronto, which is a yearly convention, and they get about 1,500, maybe a little bit more the last couple of years. Um, Obviously, it was paused
yeah.
for COVID, but when they came back, I think it might have been as close to 17 or 18. I'm not really sure
Wow.
on the numbers, but yeah, they do a 3 day conference. And part of that is play testing, new games, and you can bring games. They have a game library, that kind of thing, like every other con. There's TABS, which is the Toronto Area Board Gaming Society. They do 3 events a year. There's tons of board game cafes, and they're always doing different kinds of events. Almost all of them have some sort of play testing, designer night, that kind of thing. Um, yeah, it's an amazing community. I feel really lucky to be part of it. But I have to say, where you are, it sounds amazing because, I mean, just from a travel point of view, you can, get on a boat and a train, and you go through, 6 or 7 countries in a very short period of time, and
Yep.
can go to places where, like Germany, where those designers tend to not come to to our events very much here in North America, and so that makes me a little jealous. I would love to go there sometime, but we'll see.
Yeah. So yeah, this is my first back to back. But speaking about Senflin, it's interesting because obviously you may know they do the Ludology podcast. Are you familiar? They
Yep.
so I would love to appear on
What's it
them.
called? Is it Ludology? Is that what it's called?
Ludology, yeah. I listen to every episode, and if you can send this to him or something about the fact that they talk about. I mean, they're now into the heart of the board game as opposed to the brain, which is how Jeffrey Engelstein and obviously Ryan Sturm started it. But for me, I think based on the heart of it, what I think they find very interesting to know about is the teach. And I don't think they've done much on that. And I goes, I've done many, many, many demos over a decade with asmodee. I hear a lot of different things about, for example, with Scout. You may have played Scout.
Yeah.
And you've played deck builders. You know where I come from. I was
Yep.
playing with Scout, and somebody like won a trick, or he won the card, whatever it was, and he literally took the card and put it into his hand. I said, "Oh, hang on, I didn't say to do that." I could have said, "Oh, what are you doing?" But I thought, say not to do that is a better approach. I'll tell you why. Because he said, "Oh, I've just played this card building game," and I said, "Sorry," and he went, "Oh, like Dominion." I went, "Oh, okay." I thought that's what he meant. So he thought, of
Mm,
course, you take it into your hand, and I said, "Oh
right.
no!" And that's where science and almost the robotomation of board games, i.e., like a computer, the rules are there. You go left and you go left. You go right, you go right. The rules tell you exactly what to do. Playing Jaipur yesterday, which I think I mentioned in a video this morning I made, basically in that game, the back of the box says one of the options is. Have you played Jaipur?
Yep.
So one of the options is you can take a card from the center and you can replace it. Another option is you can trade. So you trade cards from your hand and your camels with the center.
Yep.
However, the back of the box says trade one for one. And people in BoardGameGeek are applying to my query that it's 1 to 1, but it doesn't say a minimum of two, which it should do. It does
Hmm.
say in the rules it's kind of fine, but the back of the box it's not clear, and thus there's
Interesting.
ambiguity, and that's where it comes to teach. And like you can teach a game. I mean, I've seen people teach me Splendid Duel in 25, 26 minutes, and yet I've made a 90-second video how to play it. I've been
Right.
taught a very cute looking game which looks very innocuous, but actually is pretty darn complicated in terms of the mind levels you have to go through, and it takes about an hour to play. And it was taught to me in about 25 minutes when I was demoing for Two Tomatoes at Spiel lesson. But actually, I was able to do a demo of it and say, here's how to play it in under 5 minutes, because I had a meeting to get to, so I only had 5 minutes. And I asked the other sort of demoer how they got on it. Oh, yeah, they got it. Apparently, amongst other reasons, they understood it, it seems, is they used to much heavier games than that. So I'm not saying it's very heavy, but it's extremely unforgiving in what you think it actually is. And I've seen people drinking beer on a morning, and I said, they want to play Islet, the game I'm talking about. And I says, "You're drinking beer. Do you want to play this game, or do you want to play a simpler, funnier game?" And then it's simpler, funny. So because it looks great, but you're literally playing a card, but then you need that card, you need to get that card back again, and you've got a handle in it, and it's just really crunchy, very crunchy. Lots of people go, "Whoa, it might be the best of the three that I played," and it did sell out. But I'm
Hmm.
wondering if people just got it rather because it took longer to play, people couldn't get hold of it, so they just went, "Oh, I'm just going to buy the game." And again, it
Right.
looks has all three have great table presence. However, um, people demo games because they need to understand what it's about. And sometimes it's that 1 to 2 minutes of like, okay, you do this, and then you do this, and straight away you can see in their eyes, ah. And there's usually a key
Yeah.
moment, including for myself, that you can recall why something is so effective as well.
Yeah.
Um, so, what about your shelf of shame? I can't see any games behind you. That's absolutely fine. Do you have many that you've yet to open? What's your collection like? Your size? Have you got rid of any? That kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'm constantly battling with shelf space. That's for sure. I I'm always confused about what the number is. I think BGG tells me it's around 800 games or so.
Good.
Um, but that includes expansions, right? And some of those expansions are like one card or two cards or something. So I think the actual number is around 500, 480, something like that, of actual individual games.
Hmm.
I I have about, probably at any given time, I have about 100 games that I'm trying to either sell or trade away or get rid of, just because they don't, make the circulation in the rounds very often. But the shelf of shame is pretty high. I'd say it's easily 60 games at this moment. um, it's just never enough time. There's never enough time to learn the game, and I'm always the one doing the teaching. Like my wife doesn't like to learn a game unless someone's teaching it to us, or me teaching it to her. She's my primary game player, gaming partner. She plays a lot of games with me in two player. And I started a board game group up here in Bob Cajun, and so I do a lot more teaching. It's it's not something I love, but I agree with you that like there's a real art to it. I think I do it okay with games that I know like inside and out, and I've played dozens and dozens of times. It's when I haven't picked this game up for a year and a half, 2 years, and I scan through the rules a half an hour before, maybe the night before. That's when I feel like I wish I'd played this recently so that I can teach it better, or I'm in the middle of explaining it and I can see on the person's face this look of what what are we doing, why would we do
Yeah,
that,
it's horrible, isn't
and
it?
it's
Like,
like,
oh
okay, in
no.
the middle of my explaining it, I've clearly strayed somewhere and I don't know how to get it back on track. But it's definitely an art. I have a friend who used to work for our local game store, and watching that guy, first recommend games for people, it was like magic. And then, sitting down to explain a game, something that would take me maybe 5-10 minutes, he could do it in about 2 minutes and explain it really well. And I'd be like, wow. Like, my wife always tells me I'm wordy. I'm very wordy. I talk a lot. I use more words than I need to. I give lots of examples like this. And he was very, very succinct, and it was very interesting watching that kind of thing. We would go to Snakes and Lattes in downtown Toronto, and those guys are fantastic. I mean, they talk amongst themselves all the time. The gurus that they have there, they do, sort of teach me this game, even though they know how to play it, kind of thing. And they talk amongst themselves like, oh, I have trouble explaining this part of the game and that part of the game. And it's a real sort of master class when someone does it well, to listen to them explain a game. I do find, though, for me personally, and this is probably why I teach like this, I do find that if someone explains the rules really, really quickly, I tend to lose track of what we're doing, and why, and what the incentive is, for different parts of the game. So I don't know. It's a real balance, right? Because everybody learns differently. Some people learn by watching the board, and picking up the pieces and using them as examples, like, first you're going to go over here, and then you're going to do this, and in this spot you can do this. And some people just learn by auditory, like, okay, first we draw a card, then you're going to play this or that, it's going to have a number. And then there's people who learn by some sort of combination of it. So it's a real, yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like, I feel like there could be a university course in teaching games. I know that there
Well,
are there are now courses on designing games,
oh really?
but
So I need to get you need to send me this because like I've got this £250 voucher I can use towards this kind of stuff. So yeah, send me an email as to options I can do, and I'll look into those. Again, I don't know if they're online only or something, but
yeah, I don't know of any that are online. But
ah,
one of so Scott Nicholson, he was
oh
probably
yeah,
one of the first YouTube,
yeah,
does reviewers.
yeah.
He lived in America, was American, and
He was
I
a
want to say a
teacher.
few years ago, but I'm going to say it's probably now 7 or 8 years ago. I met him. He's a wonderful guy. And he moved to Toronto, or wow, I shouldn't say that. He moved to Ontario, in the area of Toronto. And I forgot why I brought him up, but he's an excellent teacher.
Yeah,
He's an interesting guy. Oh, I know why, because we were talking about board game design courses. So he's a professor, and he
yep,
teaches a board game design course. He teaches, I think some of it is like escape room, because that's quite
yes,
popular. I went to a talk that he did at one of our cons. The con is called Proto TO. So it's like prototyping. So game designers will go there with
yep,
their games, and playtesters will go there to play them. And Scott Nicholson, he did this talk about designing games and what the thought process was behind it, and telling a story throughout your game, and even the alternative markets for game designers, like, not just, I'm going to build this game to get it published, but I'm going to build a game that's going to help a corporation train their staff in a better way. And it was inspiring on a whole new level for me. Like I said before, I'm not interested in being a board game designer, but like if anybody could have convinced me, Scott Nicholson was pretty darn close that day
Okay.
because it was just inspirational. He was just,
Wow.
took a really interesting approach to it all, and had some really good resources and ideas for designers. And maybe in the design world, they know all these things, but I don't think so. For me, I thought I was fascinated and riveted. My wife was with me and she was like, I want to design a game now too. Of course, we haven't done any of that, and I have really no intention, but it definitely inspired me and made me excited about it. Now, we talked about Eric Lang. I've play tested a few of his games, and that guy has tons of games on the go. Like, so I was going kind of once a week or once every couple of weeks, and there was always a different game. I think there was only one game that we played multiple times, and he has like this little folder that he had that he keep all his notes in, and it was I so people, when I'm teaching a game, people will often say, I don't know how you keep all the rules straight in your head. That's exactly how I felt about Eric Lang and his games. It's like, not necessarily the rules, but just how do you keep the different things you want to happen in this design separate in your head.
Hmm.
Like, you want to invoke this kind of experience with this game, and then you want, a lighter kind of, a friendlier or approachable game with this game, and then you've got this really deeper strategic game that you've got going on, and he'll just pull it. I think we're going to play this today. We're going to play this today. It was just baffling the way that game designers, especially ones that can work on three or four, or in his case, I think probably a dozen games or more at the same time. That's baffling. I just don't understand how you can juggle all of that.
So, as for Eric Lang, Eric M. Lang, have you played any of
Yeah.
his games which have come to fruition, such as Bloodborne, the board game I think there is, and obviously Rising Sun and Ankh and stuff like this? Have you played any of those when they're in prototype form?
Yeah, I play tested a few games that I'm not sure came out, but there's a game called Secrets that we play tested. We play tested Victorian Masterminds quite a few times. That's probably the one we played the most. There was I think he didn't he do a Magic the Gathering kind of game. It was a trading card game of some kind that we played. We did Rising Sun a couple of times. That was fantastic. I wanted to buy it like the prototype right off the table. I loved it.
Hmm.
I didn't get to play Blood Rage. That was before I started play testing with him. We play tested Ankh. That was good. Um, Not my favorite of the three. I love Blood Rage, and I just admire Rising Sun. We play tested The Godfather,
Oh yeah.
which is one that I went out and bought. I love that. Um,
Do you get it
yeah, a
signed?
few others. What's that?
So, do you ever get things signed or chosen?
No, I haven't. I haven't been, because he moved away to, I guess, I'm going to probably get it wrong, but I want to say Singapore,
I mean,
when
he
he was
did come from Singapore, I thought, and then I thought he's moved to New York now, maybe. But
no, I believe he's back in Toronto. Again, I
okay,
haven't talked to him since, the whole COVID pandemic and all that kind of thing.
okay.
But no, he lived in Toronto before he moved to Singapore, and he would invite people into his house, and his wife would make dinner. It was really
Yum.
a great little thing that they had going on. And they did it every week, and play test two or three different games, and then go home.
Hmm.
Um, what did you ask? Sorry, what was
No,
it?
was that mainly about any signings, any sort of any
Yeah,
other?
so no, I play tested these games, and it didn't really have any Eric Lang games besides Battlestar Galactica, which he was development on.
Oh yes,
Um,
Corey
yeah,
Konechka, who I have been messaging, but I've never met him in person. I don't know if he goes over to Spiel lesson, but yeah, it was really great when he was responding back and he liked some videos I did for something or another, which is cool.
yeah.
But
I have a friend who met him down in Gen Con, I think, but apparently he's a really neat guy. But yeah, so I never got anything signed by him, but I have other games that I've signed by some of the people around here. I've seen Eric a lot, like at different events. I don't know. I just haven't brought a game to get signed. Usually his games are a little bigger to bring.
So the
So yeah,
the who was it? The Blood Rage. I always think it looks like a spider on the front cover. You know, it's obviously got the shield for Blood Rage.
oh yeah, yeah.
It looks like a spider for some reason. If you look at it a certain way, it's hard not to think of it like a spider with the legs coming down. If you have another look
Great.
at
Now
it,
that's all I'm going to see when I look at
yeah.
it.
So yeah, it's one of those things. Um, but obviously, yeah, it's been really interesting to hear. So, of your Shelf of Shame games, I mean, are any of them or most of them in Shrink? Do you know what you've had the longest or the most recent Shelf of Shame that's been on there? Do you have
Oh,
do you
gee.
have categorized it?
Um, well, the one that I just got off the shelf of shame, I just got sent to me, so it wasn't on the shelf of shame for very long.
Hmm.
It was called Dog Park by, I think it's called Birdhouse Games.
Oh yes, I've got that. No, I've got Forever Home, which is their follow-up,
Forever is the new
which
one.
is
Yeah,
also
yeah,
my Shelf of Shame. But I'm sure they like
yeah.
the exposure there.
Really like Dog Park, so I'm looking forward to Forever
Forever
Home. Is
Home,
that
I
what it's
think it's
called? Yeah,
yeah. I think that's what
Forever
people
Home.
say when your home you're gonna live in for the rest of your life is kind of how they
Yeah.
refer to it as.
I think the longest a game that's been on my shelf of shame is probably Aquasphere by Stefan Feld.
I haven't played it. It's blue cover. It looks really nice, like a yellowy thing as well. Yeah, no, I've heard it's
Yeah,
fairly heavy, but
and the
definitely want to
board
try it.
kind of goes out kind of spiderish actually now that I think about it.
Mm.
Looks fantastic, and for whatever reason I just never get it out and get it to the table, and I've kind of gone through the rules uh half the way, three or four different times, and never got through them and finished it. um just always seems to be something that gets in the way, but that one's probably been on my shelf of shame the longest. How about you?
The longest has been 1600 days, I think, and that would be for my
Wow.
my parents-in-law. In German, that'd be your Schwiegereltern. And it's so one of the games that got into board game was Your Bluffing from 1986, which was recommended for the Spiel.digital by Rutger Holtz. And it's a bluffing game, a bidding game, and it was implemented as Your Bluffing Master or Coup Handle Master, which is how it initially translates as, which means cow trader. So I did have that game. I've since sold it. I then got it again a few times. I've actually owned the original game a few times, including the first and second edition, including the promo, which I've yet to play with. But Tom Vasel did a video about Bidder Up, which is the board game version of it. And I
Okay.
prefer the German artwork, which is language independent anyway. And it was in the local shop where my in-laws live, in the nearest village or nearest town, and it did go a reduction in price, about €20, but I don't think they got it when it was reduced, annoyingly. Um, but I've taken it home to the UK. I've still yet to play it. I'm still very keen to play it. I don't know if I'm going to need it because the other one's so small and compact, and it's just a bunch of cards. But you can change things a little bit in it too. So it's 2 to 4 player game as opposed to 2 to 5, 3 to 5. I think it might be 3 to 5 as well. But
Hmm.
that game is 1,565 days last time I checked, which is more than that now. But they haven't asked about it since because we tend to go and hand luggage over to Germany for Christmas. We generally don't fill up space taking obviously a game, but it might be the case I take it over there and bring a different game back. Hopefully get some chance to play it before then, because it's a shame that we haven't had a chance to play it, and hopefully we'll have a lot of chance to play it too. So yeah.
How do you keep track of how many days it's been?
There's a really cool
Yeah.
website called Geek Buddy that I've used,
Keep buddy.
which
Okay.
yeah, you can chuck it in, and yeah, it's a nice thing. Equally, if you open a game like Everdell Complete Collection, you know that isn't a log play until you play it, so there's that factor too. But sometimes you open it to log a play and then you don't play it the same day, so I don't know if you can unlog a play. You sort of can. I'm guessing you can, but it's handy for me to know, when you do it. There are some other apps coming out which involve AI, so you don't even need to have that whole picture. It just like grabs a little bit of it and it knows what it is, and
Really?
you can sell.
That's
Yeah,
neat.
it's this Belgian company, so
Hmm.
it's not out till next year, but I'm helping them with the development of it, so that sounds quite cool.
Oh, that's
So
great.
yeah, sounds
So
pretty
I
nice.
have a question for you. So in Canada in particular, I obviously have never lived in the States, so I don't know what it's like in the States. But from what I see of people talking about in the US as well as in Canada, there are not a ton of games, but there are some games that we can't get here. I don't know if that's the same in the UK.
Fulfillment, yeah, and distribution. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Like certain versions, like you had mentioned the German version of that game. I have a friend who is, obsessed with certain games, and it's like it has to be this certain version because
yeah,
the artwork is better, that kind of thing. Um, do you guys have that? Like, are
yeah,
there
yeah,
games
yeah.
you? Yeah, yeah,
So there's loads of games which, like behind me, I've got Pegasus Spieler games, or let's say some games which basically would be Stronghold or whoever it might be over in the States. So you have regionalized versions on it. So Far Away that I mentioned is by Catch Up
yeah.
Games in France. I know, having gone to BGG, that Pandasaurus are doing it. I know that from BGG that there's going to be a German distributor, which might be Pegasus Spieler, who knows? But again, you have distribution. So games like Evolution came out obviously in Russian first. It came out in wherever it was in Germany.
Really?
But then North Star Games, they did the North American rights for it. Quacks of Quillenberg, Schmidt-Spieled in Germany, and I think for the rest
Right.
of Europe. But again, North Star had it for North America. But when I say North America, it might just be for US. It might be different. Renegade do lanterns, which you mentioned earlier,
Yep.
and so Daryl Andrews also did Artemis Project. So you can see my videos Artemis Project by the Grand Gamers Guild. But
Sorry,
over
which one?
the Artemis Project. So it's like a
No, that wasn't Daryl Andrews.
oh,
That
wasn't it
was
Daryl Adrian
um,
Adamescu? I thought it was
I
those two.
don't think so.
Okay,
Um, I've met one of the co-designers. He's a good friend, actually.
okay. I can quickly check it.
But I'm trying to remember the other guy. Let's just look him up if you
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
mind.
yeah. So let's see who can find it first. Meanwhile, crucially, yeah, for some reason or another, they just have different uh, modes in which they do it. Oh, Daryl Chow. Sorry,
Daryl
Daryl Chow.
Chow and
Which I do know
Daniel
Daryl
Rose.
Chow because Daryl I met at UK Games Expo this year
Okay.
in June. So yes, that was my bad for picking up on that one. Daryl's is what I was thinking of, but I
Yeah,
spoke
yeah,
to the great guild master himself, Mark Spector, at the show again, and
yeah.
he said about Daryl Chow, and I just thought he was talking about something else. But yeah, there we go. But of course, that's basically Alien Frontiers it's a very similar game. Slightly different
Is it
because
really?
you
I've never played Alien Frontiers,
really
but I
like it.
love Artemis Project. I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
So my copy's over in Germany, and I haven't got it back yet. Speaking of hand luggage, so if Mark's watching this, I think he's fully aware because he wanted to send me the expansion. But oh, it's over in Germany now. But I want to try Artemis Odyssey by Bruno Feduti, who's quite a
Yeah.
wacky designer and kind of the stuff that you do in a game. Like, wait, he's definitely I don't know, out there a bit to a degree, like Guillotine, I think he did and stuff like that, as opposed to Bruno Cathala, who just does really solid games
Yeah.
typically. But like I said, some of these designers have played their games, including Dr. Rainer Knizia, and they're just not as. You think, oh, it's great. And even Alexander Pfister, I didn't like Oh My Goods or Isle of Skye too much, even though one of them, I think, won Spiel.digital was nominated. So every game you play, it does vary a bit. Um,
You did. Sorry, you didn't like Oh My Goods?
I love Port Royal. Port Royals are my top five of all time,
Ah,
but it's
okay.
a different game. It's so good, Port Royal. I think it's his favorite game as well, based on the fact it's the only game that he's got in his collection on his like top five. I haven't tried muting this when I try coughing for a second. I don't know if you heard that, and I don't know if it's
Nope.
called. It
You're
might have,
good.
it might have caught it on the video and on the recording. Speaking of which, we're probably going to run out of disk drive space because I know that's happened in the past. So hopefully that doesn't kick out. But no, I was keen to know as a final kind of thoughts and stuff. Do you have any games you've got pre-ordered? Any games you're expecting to arrive? Anything in your basket? Anything that you're looking to play got lined up the next few days and weeks and stuff?
I've got a few games on hold. Like so, I order from the different stores in the area, but Board Game Bliss is the store that I tend to order from the most, and they will hold your order. And what have I got there? I've got an expansion for Merlin, which is one of my latest obsessions. My wife and I have been playing that quite a
Haven't
bit.
played it yet. Stefan Feld, I believe. Queen Games, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So we just had the base game and we liked it so much, but felt like there could be more. And so I put one of the expansions in my cart and bought it, and I'm going to get that shipped soon. Um, we played, oh geez, what is it called? Cat in the Box? Cat in the
Oh,
Box.
Cannon Box, the by
Yeah,
Bezier. You've got the Bezier edition as opposed to the Hobby World Japan. Sorry, Hobby Japan version. Sorry, Hobby World is a Russian publisher. Yep.
Yeah, I we played that for the first time, I don't know, a couple months ago, and loved it. So that's
Hmm.
waiting for me to get it shipped or go pick it up. There was something else that was kind of new and exciting that I can't remember at the moment. Like I said, I've got that bad memory. I've got to look it up. You know, I've got lists everywhere of things that I'm working on and doing and stuff. And then I've got my phone too, which is around here somewhere, and I'm always making lists on that. It's yeah, I don't know. As you get older, your brain works a little differently, and I have to write things down. Although I can't remember things quite the well as I used to.
Okay.
Um,
And
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so any games that you think you particularly do well at or bad at that you
Oh, I'm bad at all games. I don't know if there's any
least
game that I'm
worst?
particularly good at. I don't really play to win. I play to be honest, I play for the relationships. I play to meet new people, to get to know the people that, you know, that want to play games with us, and to be with my friends. I never really think about winning. The only time I get, I guess you could say, upset is when I made a bad mistake. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if I'm in first place or last place. Then it's usually like right after your turn's over. It's like, oh, why did I do that? That's so dumb. I overpaid for this, and I should have bought that, and da 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 da. Whatever the game is, um, and that's really the only time that I get frustrated about playing a game because I really I don't care about winning. I've been keeping track of my stats for, I guess, about 10 years. I don't know. And I just recently started marking down who wins. I use
Oh,
BG Stats as the app that I use. And, I was looking at a friend's, he was showing me his BG stats, and he was like, "Oh, look, you won this game every time we played it." And I was like, "Really?" I had no idea, and I was kind of curious, so I thought, "Oh, I'll start putting in scores." But even now, put in I don't put in every score that we play. It's I don't know. It just becomes tedious at some point. I prefer the data to be how many, like, not so much how many games, although that's interesting too, but
yeah.
how many times I played each individual game. Like, like we've played Quirkle like 87 times or
Blimey.
something like that. Something like
Female
that. So
designer.
it's like, what's that?
Sorry, female designer there. Call out to female
Yeah.
designer, yeah.
Yeah. And I like that kind of information because it's like, wow, you know, I like Quirkle. I really like Quirkle. My
Yeah.
wife likes Quirkle. We do play it a lot, but I never would have pictured it as one of my top three games that we've played the most or something like that. And yeah, so that kind of information just makes me surprised sometimes. It's like, oh, I love that game. We've only played it like 7 times. And we got to play that more often, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. It's
That those
hard to
kind of
estimate.
stats fascinate me.
Cool. It's interesting because even like Port Royal, I think I'm past 200 plays of that now. So,
Wow.
yeah, do love it. Again, it does depend on some games. Obviously, Viticulture you can't play because it takes a lot longer compared to obviously a shorter
Sure.
game.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I even include, the color I played at, who went first, who went
Really?
third. I include obviously the time it takes, the location, loads of other stuff as well. Like
Wow.
was there a tie break and what happened on the tie break, or who played which character maybe. Loads of stuff which is completely useless typically, but people say no, this is really useful at times. So I know I've
Huh.
played every fate in Legends of Andor and such like that, so it's handy to know.
Oh,
And
well, that's
equally
cool.
with Everdell, I don't know if it's going to be relevant there, but of course I'll make sure I know which expansion I'm using and such like. So
Right.
yeah, really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. That's cool. I like that. I admire that commitment. That's for sure. I just don't have it in me, I think, to put in all that information, and um, yeah, it just takes time, right? I
Yeah, yeah,
mean,
yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
I find that if I can write down the date, where we played it, who I played it with, and the scores, I've taken up enough time for the game itself. So that's
Yeah.
about all that I keep track of.
Well, speaking of time, obviously this has been great to chat. I'm happy to speak to you off the recording as well. But it'd be very fascinating to hear, obviously what a Torontoer on an Ontarian has provided to me, and obviously look forward to speaking again soon. Maybe there's a chance to speak obviously on your podcast and about whatever topic you might want to bring up in time with yourself and Matt, or just
Super.
yourself, whoever. So
Yeah.
yeah, obviously I'll end that now, but I'll have a quick chance to chat. So for now, obviously back to the table.